Shannon Bream joining us now. You can joining us by phone. This one of the other things that I thought too, and we'll get into some of the short list of the prospective justices that could potentially be nominated by Biden. This isn't the first leak that we've dealt with in the past week. We had that NPR Nina Totenberg story. And I'm not used to leaks coming from the Supreme Court or any kind of drama of that nature coming from the Supreme Court. Is there a leak problem?
It is very unusual. You're exactly right. For us to get anything from there, it is a tough beat to cover just because of that. You know, Congress is full of holes all over the place and people leaking you information with their own agendas and motives. And the court is pretty cordoned off from that kind of thing. You don't leak if you're a clerk. That could cost you your entire legal career. Wow. So it's a very tight lockdown over there. So, yeah, listen, the news that came out last week that, again, I reached out to my sources and found out was not accurate. You know, that was unusual that information would have been floating around, even though the Chief Justice himself, Justices Sotomayor and Gorsuch, are the ones who publicly knocked it down as well. You know, and this week, too, it was a little bit surprising because I think regardless of how you feel about his philosophy as a jurist or the decisions he's made, I think everybody has deep respect for Supreme Court Justice like Justice Breyer, to give him his day and his time to be recognized for his contribution for decades to this country in judicial service. And to have his day and choosing of being able to say goodbye and make his announcement as he would like to do. So it was surprising.
Yes, it was. We're talking with Shannon Bream from Fox News on this news with the Supreme Court and on Justice Breyer too. He's a very interesting justice because he's a moderate, really. I mean, he would side with the liberal wing of the court on a number of issues, the social issues, but when it came to criminal justice, he had said that I think the phrase that he used was, quote, living constitutionalist. And that seems to be kind of his legacy that everybody's talking about, that he very much was a moderate, and it seemed to reflect kind of that middle road, the middle of the country. And from what I understand, that's sort of what Mitch McConnell hit in his statement that he apparently just released while we were on break, talked about that middle of the road. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, he was very much a guy looking for consensus. I never saw him lash out or lose his temper. And, you know, behind the scenes, too, we would have occasional lunches with him at his favorite little Chinese restaurant he liked to go to and talk about life. And with the press corps, some of us, and you know, he just was a very congenial person who, you know, you have some on the bench who really will go after each other in dissents or opinions. It gets very pointed and heated, and that just wasn't the way he operated. He was, I think, often looking for common ground, and he came to it often as somebody who doesn't have all the answers. He would, you know, really play around with hypotheticals. He'd want to probe what happens if we decide this or that, and really push that through a conversation with the judge or with the lawyers who were there arguing, and with his clerks as well. So he really was a very thoughtful person, regardless of whether you agreed with where he ended up. He was very pragmatic and very much attempting to build consensus. That's always the feeling I got from him.
Yeah. And so whomever they choose to nominate, the president chooses to nominate, we heard from him that he's going through what he said on the campaign trail and that he's going to choose a black female justice. And I know that there are a couple of names that I hear a lot being thrown around. Kruger, Jackson, I think that there are several other names. Of course, Stacey Abrams' sister. That's all I've been hearing and seeing on social media. But do you think, and this is kind of looking at a crystal ball, so to speak, it seems as though Democrats' best chances would be to have a nominee that's very similar in Breyer's vein, kind of a moderate, maybe would decide with them on some of the social issues, maybe pretty much just in his mold. What are your thoughts on that? Because that really kind of narrows that list down a little bit, I think.
Mm-hmm. It does. But one of the things he has going for him, if he goes with the front runner, which is Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, she sits on the D.C. Circuit, which is sort of one of these, the feeder court for the Supreme Court. Numerous justices have come through that court. It's very well respected, very powerful, very intellectually rigorous. She was confirmed by the Senate just months ago. It hasn't even been a year to her latest post on the bench. So she had 3 GOP votes at the time. And it's going to be very hard for justices to turn around senators to now turn around and say, well, now we think she's not qualified. Yes, the Supreme Court is a totally different ball game. It is a tough vetting and confirmation process. It is the highest court in the land, the biggest seat you could ever rise to as a judge. So it's going to be tough for whoever runs that gauntlet. But several of the people on the list have been elevated to where they sit now in ways that included Republican votes and senators who remain there. So, I think you'll be able to keep the Democrats together, absent going completely left field. But I wouldn't rule out some Republican votes too. Graham, Collins, and Murkowski voted for Judge Brown Jackson, and some of the others on the list as well.
And she does seem to be the front runner, being that she was the Biden nominee. Or the Biden pick for DC Circuit. She already got through, as you said, just a year ago. And the Senate, because that seems to be a good argument. Well, you just voted for a year ago. The Senate, why would they object now? That does seem to be a good argument. She said to not be as moderate, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, as Kruger. So I don't know if that's going to be a hurdle or if there's that much of a difference for it to be a hurdle.
Well, and Justice Kruger is a Supreme Court justice in California. On the state court there, she is viewed as a little bit more moderate and kind of more of a swing vote. She would be more in the mold of like a Breyer or a Kennedy by a lot of people's estimations based on what she's done at the state level. She's 45. She's got young kids. She's very interesting, got an interesting background, and she's argued numerous cases, I think about a dozen cases before the Supreme Court. So she's got all kinds of important experience, credentials, excellent education, the best of the best. So she's a strong front runner too. And I think that if they wanted to give, a nod to somebody who's viewed as a little bit more moderate than Judge Brown Jackson, Justice Kruger would be a good place to go. And listen, any of these people by Supreme Court standards are young. Most of the list includes people in their 40s and 50s. And that would give you, decades of a legacy on the Supreme Court as a president. So it's a young field.
Yeah, very young field. We're talking with Shannon Bream of Fox News on all of this breakdown with the Supreme Court. And from what I understand, Justice Breyer staying on till the end of his term. Is that unusual also to have the announcement come this early, and then you have sort of this, a 5-month waiting period? From what I understand, June's the end of his term.
I thought it was early. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility that we thought he may retire this year, but we do tend to think of it as a May or June announcement. A lot of times justices wait till the final day on the bench in June or early July. So it felt a little bit early, but I'm told, he'd made this decision. The announcement was earlier than he had planned, but that this decision was already made. So he said in his letter today to the White House, listen, I'm staying until my replacement is nominated and confirmed, and they have plenty of time to do that now. We had thought, kind of trying to read the tea leaves, like, listen, maybe he announces his retirement, leaves the bench in June or July, and then this battle rages all summer over confirmation, which actually would be, many people think, a plus for the Democrats to say, like, see, this is why we got to hold the Senate. You got to turn out. These battles are important. These seats are important on the Supreme Court. So the whole thing feels early, but it's official today.
Wow. Unbelievable. One last quick question. We're talking to Shannon Bream, as you know, Fox News attorney, knows this is her wheelhouse, and she's one of the first people that I went to because I thought this was so weird. Is this an official Supreme Court announcement? Can we trust this? And then when I saw that you were tweeting about it, I'm like, okay, we can. It's odd, but it's legitimate. How fast of this could be a fast process. I think Coney Barrett was maybe a month. It just seems weird that we would have a nominee confirmed, we would have a replacement, and it's almost kind of having one justice on the bench and then a justice in the wings. I've never experienced anything like that. I don't know if it's unusual, but we could theoretically look at that scenario.
Yeah, it's rare, but it does happen. The president gave a little bit of a timeline today, saying that he is looking to have his nominee named by the end of February. So then that gives a couple months to, you go meet the senators, kind of your charm offensive, you talk to them one-on-one, they get the key hearings going. But yeah, Justice Amy Coney Barrett was very expedited for obvious reasons with the election looming. That's the quickest one I've ever covered. This one has a little bit more breathing room, but we should have the nominee's name by late February, according to the president.
And I will definitely be watching for your take on that. Shannon Bream, host of News at Night with Shannon Bream. And you can also check out, she's an author too. You can also find her books, Finding the Bright Side, The Art of Chasing What Matters, and The Women of the Bible Speak, the wisdom of 16 women and their lessons for today. Shannon Bream, always such a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Honored to be with you. Thanks, Dana.
Of course. Thank you.